Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you for joining us on Tech and Tequila. I am super excited. I have a great guest here today, but I am pumped. So let me go ahead and introduce my guest. I have Mr. Jaime. Do you care to take a few minutes and introduce yourself, give everyone a little background and who you are and what your specialty is?
Absolutely. So, hi, my name is Jaime Zarate. I'm a channel manager at AirSpring, and my background is quite a journey over the last 30 years. So, out of school, I started out with AT&T as an account executive, and just happened to always seem to be at the right place at the right time. And I still remember the day I got an email on my Unix system that I needed to go to internet class and learn about this new thing called the internet. This is like 1994, 95 timeframe, and kind of grew up with the whole concept of a connected world and kind of a digital business world. Then right as what we kind of called the equal access craze of the late 90s, where AT&T all of a sudden had a ton of competition instead of the Lex, led me away to specialize in contact center technologies. I worked for Rockwell, who merged with Aspect later on. And it's always been my love. I love contact centers. They do great. Whether the economy is great or the economy is bad, contact centers are always doing well. They're kind of a cool part of the business. From there, I moved on to systems integration with a global company called Unisys, and actually led global ERP and CRM practices in design and delivery of specific solutions groups for everything from large ERP projects, client relationship management, things like that. And then made my way back over to the carrier world. I was with XO for a while and helped run their cloud business group, which was a platform of a service offer where people would use our platform to do everything from calling parents, letting them know that there was a snowstorm and there's no school, things like that. And led to one of the largest implementations of Cloud Genesis with the U.S. Postal Service. And then from there, actually went to become a partner like you and learned that side of the business and learned quickly that I was not born an entrepreneur. I was born a corporate person, and I'm here to support entrepreneurs. I think you're so brave and it's amazing what you do. It was just a little more that I could handle from a stress perspective. And then did a short stint with a company called Fusion Connect, specializing in Microsoft offerings. And now I'm at my new and what I think is my permanent home forever, AirSpring, as a channel manager for a large global network aggregation provider and also managed network provider. So, we can either just provide, the connectivity itself or manage what we call WAN as a service on a, true global scale. Where we just integrate networks and make them work holistically for a company in supporting their strategy.
Yes. And while I've known you for a while, and you truly, for lack of a better term, we're going to say we've been around the block a little bit, both of us. I'm very excited that you're over at AirSpring. And like I said, thank you again for joining me on the podcast today. But I would be remiss if we didn't cover one of the big hot topics right now. And that is, as I'm sure you're well aware, both of us come from AT&T during our career path, is their mobility side going completely down last Thursday. And last time I looked, it said there were like 58,000 incidents that were reported. And I'm kind of interested to get your take on this whole, AT&T going out, what that means for business, things that you can think about.
Absolutely. And, as an AT&T alum, I feel comfortable in talking about AT&T from both the internal and external perspective. But I think that the lesson is more not so much of what happened at AT&T, but what happens when we lose connectivity network access, either on a consumer personal level or on the business level. And what I normally try to position in people's minds is, if you think of the modern enterprise like a human body, right? We have organs, we have functions that are specific to different parts of the body, and we have what's called a circulatory system that moves blood around and makes sure that everything's working well and we don't pass out. So if you think of it from that perspective, anytime we have a single point of failure in a system like the body, if the heart gives out, there's really not a lot of options for us. We can lose a lung, we can lose a kidney, but the what I call single threaded systems like the brain, the heart, things like that, need to always have the ability to fail over to something else. So if we take that to the enterprise level, and today's hot topics are really around, security, generative AI, things like that. If we think of those things as strategies and ultimately applications, those applications really look and feel a lot like those single-threaded systems within the human body, the brain, other things. And if you think of this, the circulatory system like a network, the thing that actually moves and manages information on behalf of the enterprise. If the network has a single point of failure, everything that's dependent on it, from strategy to workflow, process, applications, making money, fulfilling orders, all those kind of things stops. And if we look at, and I hate picking on AT&T, but there was another major outage about 4 years ago here in Dallas, where their internet pop blew up. And I think literally it blew up. There was a fire and all kinds of things. And never would think of it, but a lot of restaurants in Dallas had to close down for the day. They couldn't take money for the food they would serve. The only ones that made it throughout that day, and actually it was a couple of days, were those that had an ATM inside of the restaurant as a secondary option for getting money out to pay for your food. So if we take those lessons learned from outages like this, it's really around looking at the business and looking at how we do business and tracing through actually the cause and effect of what happens if. What happens if we lose connectivity at a site, at the corporate level, in an incident like this, at a regional, hopefully never a national level, things like that. And so the ability to design redundancy in it, to always make sure that we have another way of managing and delivering information, I think is going to be mission critical going forward. Because again, showing my age, I'm old enough where I remember building my own PCs, and PCs were basically a big box with a processor and software and all these things you had to put together to work. But it was isolated to, a box that you could hold in your hands. Today, the box is the internet itself, right? So we access and use applications all the time that are not anywhere near us from where they're hosted. They're hosted on somebody else's server, what we all call, affectionately the cloud. What is the cloud? The cloud is somebody else's thing. It could be a server, it could be an application or something else. And if we lose connectivity to those things, and those things are critical to the way we do business, business stops. So I think this is a good warning to those that have taken advantage of platformization and using platforms and other people's clouds to always make sure that we have a redundant circulatory system, network connection to those things so that we can keep moving.
I could not agree with you more, because one of the things that it really made me think of, and I know this from, yes, I worked at AT&T, but a lot of the time when I kind of started working on the business side of AT&T, I was in West Texas. So I was in, Midland and Odessa, and I would work with clients consistently who would be like, well, we have, this AT&T, but we also have Verizon over here, because where my guys go, sometimes AT&T doesn't work, sometimes Verizon doesn't work. And so I think kind of in addition to that is having technology diversity, making sure that you're not putting all your eggs in this one basket. Because I can think even when I deal with healthcare, a lot of the times they want to know the exact path that it's taking. So if this fiber gets cut, we can come on this other path and make sure that our backup is set and ready to go. And that's, so important. Well, not the exact same things as what happened, but I think having the business conversation of like, all right, let's talk about what's the worst case scenario. If your internet goes out, how do you have business continuity where you're not losing money, where you're not having a bad experience? And I know this from working in West Texas, there are some hosted phone systems that are completely based on cellular, on wireless. And, it's the same thing. What do you do? Because I know the feedback AT&T was giving people was, hey, default to Wi-Fi calling, which is all, I say, dandy and great. But what happens when you're not near your Wi-Fi? There's no other network, And so I think it's about redundancy, continuity, and diversifying, making sure that whatever you're doing, you have that right there. And I know you talked about, you really enjoyed the contact center while you're not there right now. I say you're not there, but you're at AirSpring, one of the things that I do want to cover with you is one of the benefits that I really think of AirSpring, because I always say we all know tech. Sometimes tech is just checking like nobody else, but it is the customer service experience that your clients have at AirSpring. So I was going to, give you a moment to kind of talk about that and how important that is to you all.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about that because, to the point of talking about technology, sometimes when we talk to or about technology companies and technology services, that's all we want to think about. We become, I think, a little almost micro-focused on what's their technology, what's their secret sauce. And a lot of times it's not. It's actually the human factor. And specifically the AirSpring, our secret sauce, our differentiator is know-how. So we are a global operating in a 190 country family business, started in the early 2000s, that has developed over time methodologies, understanding of what it actually takes to be a global systems or network manager and aggregator, and ultimately, systems integrator of the connectivity between applications and platforms and locations and people like that. That while there's a lot of great technology out there, secure access service edge technology for networking, SD-WAN, everybody's familiar with that, all these wonderful things. At the end of the day, if the business problem is not understood, if the delivery is not handled well, which we now know that the majority of customers make their renewal decision, their buying decision, based on their delivery experience. So even though their agreement might be 3 years long, it's what happened in those first, we call it 60 days of the relationship that weigh the heaviest when they're like, should we do this again? And so that know-how, that best practices that we go to market with every day. Sure, we have all the latest and greatest toys at our disposal, from networking technologies to a platform that enables self-service and artificial intelligence of understanding of how people's networks are working, all of that kind of stuff. It's does someone understand me and my business when I pick up the phone and say, help me, because I'm in over my head, or I just don't have enough resources right now to take care of this. I need somebody else to take care of it. That's where that know-how really comes in. So, AirSpring's, I think, key differentiator today is that personal touch, that understanding, and, human element of understanding how to do things correctly the first time and going forward.
I am somebody who advocates for my clientele, which means I'm sending the emails, I'm calling on the phone, but I like when I can call somebody and actually get a hold of a person and be like, all right, this is what's going on. Let me know like how we can resolve it, what can happen. And the second thing to that is, if you're not somebody who wants to call over the phone, there's other ways to get in touch with AirSpring. You can email, you can online set it up. But really, I think that's a huge differentiator from some of the big guys, is the fact that there's someone you can get a hold of. And, also the fact that there's a clear path of escalation for, if this is not getting fixed, here's what we're going to do. And I mean, that's huge. You touched on it a little bit, y'all are in how many, 191 countries at this point, but kind of, can you give us a little more background into your international presence and what all you offer?
Absolutely. So I guess it's twofold. One is the ability to source and aggregate internet circuits to support businesses around the world, and including countries like the People's Republic of China, India, some of the more difficult places, either because of political issues or economic issues, things like that, and making it all act and feel like one global network, which is really the next iteration, which is, well, how do we actually do that even better? And going back to the explanation of cloud being somebody else's stuff, and the, I guess, enemy of cloud performance is distance and latency, and the internet has a lot to do with that. Sometimes I believe people overly depend on the internet itself. Dallas is a good example. If you want to drive through Dallas quickly, you don't take the interstates, you take the tollway. Why? Because there's not a lot of semis and other things that congest it, and you can kind of zip through much more quickly. Similar concept with how we handle that on an international level is we have our own global backbone. It's a layer 2 backbone that's mutually exclusive to the internet. So for mission critical traffic, things that are very important to either the bottom line or customer service or brand, we tend to move that traffic off the internet as quickly as possible and put it over our backbone, the tollway, so that it can get to its destination as quickly and error-free as possible. And it's really that middle mile. I think from a reference architecture perspective, a lot of people call that more the secure access service edge type of look and feel. And that is, there's a short little hop on the internet from the origination to the edge of our middle mile, and then another little hop on the opposite side from the edge of the network to its destination. And we see amazing response in lack of latency, heightened security, using tools like SD-WAN to really kind of look at traffic as what are we doing with this and what do we need to do with it from a prioritization perspective, security saying voice packets always need to be there together, so let's prioritize those differently than, let's say, local internet traffic, somebody trying to watch Netflix. We don't need that over the backbone, right? That can just go out locally. So I think that from a global scale, if you take those concepts and say, wow, now we can do that in 190 countries, it's pretty amazing of the look and feel of WAN as a service in that environment versus it just being a lot of disparate circuits without a lot of strategy around it.
No, and I couldn't agree more. I think that is huge as far as being able to be in all those places. And there's one thing that you touched on, I want to go a little more depth. And we talked about this recently, and that was, knowing who that last mile is and the importance of knowing that for customer service and customer retention. I mean, I say retention, but, the customer experience is what I'm talking about.
To say that, and it reminds me of my old, and I call them the call center days. It was before contact center was kind of the bigger craze, because the majority of traffic is still voice, if we kind of look at them today. But there was an old design principle called dual entry, and that is all the way down to the last mile. We won't design, a contact center that has the last miles riding on top of each other so that one backhoe takes everything out. So dual entry is literally network connectivity coming into the building from two different sides of the street. So if we take that design principle to the modern world, especially around cloud, again, the last mile, like you said, is critical that we identify is carrier A, the same one for both the primary and backup, and is carrier A and B coming through the same physical conduit into the building. And not a lot of redundancy there, right? So those are all things that we take into account when we talk to a business, starting with, strategy, workflow, and process. How do you do business? How do you fulfill and service your customers? And then what are the applications that support that, right? Most people, that's how they interact with work every day, whether it's email, ERP systems, workflow systems, those kind of things. And those things demand network connectivity that is fault tolerant, that doesn't have a single point of failure. So we assist in tracing all of that down to that last mile, literally what we call the loop provider of how does that get from the edge of the network into your building? And is there any risk? It's single point of failure.
Exactly. And that was kind of what I was talking about, especially in the healthcare industry. That's something that is, I'm not going to say just specific to healthcare, but something that's so important because, I've had the experience where it didn't just take down the hospital for a clientele. It's like a smaller town in Texas. I won't say who because it's been a couple of years. So we'll let the anonymity of this town be, itself. But they had a major fiber cut and it didn't just take down, like the hospital was down, the city was down, 911 was down, like everything was down. And particularly the reason that the hospital called us in was because of the fact that they went down on a surgery day. So the only way that they were able to basically talk back and forth was by, I say like handheld radioing it to be able to say, here's what's going on. So when I say that it was integral, they were like, I want to know how this is being brought in because when we put our backup in, we want to make sure if A goes down, backup B is still going to stay live. And it's not, and I'm sure there's some kind of economic or financial reason that they would come in the exact same, conduit or space, but we want to make sure they're not coming into that space.
And that's a
So,
great example in a vertical that is becoming more and more dependent on that mission critical connectivity.
mhm.
And it's kind of a term that kind of sounds a little crazy, like mission critical connectivity. Are we overemphasizing this? But when you look at the different things going on in medicine today, we have hospitals here in Dallas that perform surgery where the patient is actually in Arkansas, and the surgeons here in Dallas, and via networks, they're using surgical robots to perform surgeries remotely. It's a way to get surgical talent to areas of the country that normally wouldn't have that either procedure available or that level of talent and experience available for it. Can't even imagine what a network outage would be for an environment like that. And those are always overly engineered to make sure that that's mitigated. But another good example is imaging today is typically not done on site anymore. A lot of it's done overseas now, where the radiologist might be sitting in some place like Mumbai or another country. And so you go in, you get your X-rays, and then you're waiting in the room for the doctor to come in and tell you what's going on. They're waiting on a doctor on the other side of the planet to give them that data. I've actually seen situations where practices have invested a lot of money into what I call iPads on steroids, which these big kind of imaging platforms where they can get MRI results and all kinds of very, very big files. I'm talking like multiple terabytes for a single image, and they're waiting in the hall for the Wi-Fi to catch up to download all that stuff, or they're waiting on the network because it's congested. So all of a sudden, patient wait times go up. But their intent was to offer next generation, futuristic service, but the network wasn't up to the task, right? So they had everything else in place. So, again, I think are just really good examples of where we see these types of needs arising where we didn't even think of them before. Like why would a doctor's office, need a very large internet connection? Because they're moving very large files back and forth. I'll give you another great example. Who would think that construction trailers need a lot of connectivity? They actually do. And they're the most difficult because by the very nature of what they are, they're normally sitting on an undeveloped land. So getting connectivity there is a challenge, and we've become quite good at it. But they're downloading massive tag files from remote architects updating drawings to to a work site, working on a skyscraper we're changing this floor or this material, something like that. And if they're waiting around for those files to update so that they can get those new drawings up to the people that need them, again, slows down work and it costs those businesses money. So we can go industry by industry today, and we'll see that there is a lot of bandwidth. There's a lot of circulatory things going on that need to be paid attention to because we're becoming very dependent on other people's platforms for our use. And designing networks to support that is going to be, I think, the most critical element of satisfaction from either a user or customer or a board saying, hey, we made money last year because our business process was able to continue without issues because of technologies failing like networks.
Well, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, which is, any industry, and we could go industry by industry, but any industry that has a lot of compliance, a lot of regulatory things, if they're down and out, they're either not making money or they're leaving themselves open to fines and missing regulations and things happening. And nobody wants to experience that. I mean, no business wants to be out in that sense. We touched on global, we touched on customer service, but if there was something that you were going to add about like why pick AirSpring, or, I always say the top 3 to 5 reasons, what would be like really your this is where we deep dive, this is where we do our best work, and here's how, how we're successful.
So, I think it was worth mentioning the things we already spoke about, right? So,
Mhm.
scale, right? Global scale and operations. And we actually have, AirSpring employees deployed around the world. We don't subcontract support or engineering, things like that. These are all, AirSpring badged employees, whether they're sitting in the Philippines or in the US support NOCs. They support each other with Rising Sun service so that customers always have that access to a person as a good example. That know-how, I think I can't really focus on that enough. That understanding of what it takes to design and deliver and manage networks around the world. And with that is the history of success that points to that, we've developed that know-how. So I guess, secondly, is our reputation, our brand. Is very, very strong because of that. And most people have had a very positive experience with us and
Mhm.
can point to, that personal experience, the access to, the people that they need to talk to from an operational perspective, or from an executive support perspective of, being able to call all the way up to our CEO saying, there's something going on I'd like to talk to you about. And the CEO saying, absolutely, let me take the time to hear, where you are and meet you where you are to see how, we can get this to move forward for you. And while they sound simplistic, they are, because
Mhm.
people should expect this from their provider. It's the execution and the
Mhm.
execution over history. I think that this is a testament to our brand and who AirSpring really is. And that, we don't try to be, everything to everybody. We don't have this massive portfolio of technologies. It kind of feels like, a big box store of, what are you looking for? It's on aisle 16, that kind of thing. It's like we focus very much on network design, implementation, and management, whether it's, aggregation all the way through WAN as a service and everything in
Mhm.
between. We don't try to stuff it with other things that, are industry buzzwords or things like that, just to have placeholders. We let other people specialize in that and we support them. So in keeping that message simple, and I guess every morning all of us know what we're waking up to do and what the mission is, I think is really what lends to those two first things, which is that know-how and history of success that we enjoy as a brand.
No, and I think that that is the big thing. One of, that I talk to my clients about and that I kind of touched on before is when you put all your eggs in this one basket, whether that basket be one of the majors like the AT&T, the Lumens, the Verizons, whoever it is, you know, um, I always tell them the reason that you want to work with someone like myself, like a technology consultant or a technology consulting company, is because the big guys, they can only sell what they have to offer. So they're not going to per se, come out and be like, hey, this solution really is not a good fit for you. They're going to try to shove that like round peg into a square hole and be like, you should go with us every single time. And I mean, obviously, we can continue with AirSpring being an aggregator and the things that you do offer. Like, you do have a great breadth of offerings, but what you guys offer, you know how to do it, you do it well, and you have the customer service to back it. So I think those are the biggest things that we can go on. And I know that we can't give it like all away, but there's two things that you touched on. I mean, well, AI you touched on, but I know there's some things coming up. Can you just kind of give us some things we might see in the future from AirSpring as far as like any AI that's associated, or maybe, something that's in the works that we'll see?
Absolutely. I think something that's coming out soon is a new generation of our client-facing portal.
Hmm.
So right now we have, call it, two fundamental portals. One is really around kind of network monitoring and management. The other one's really more around uh, operations and billing. And those are the ones that our customers typically go to when they have either like a billing question or something it's not mission critical, versus wanting to understand the health of their network or needing to open up a ticket or something like that to alleviate it. And we've decided that we want to consolidate all this into a single pane of glass scenario where you can come in and with a single sign-on have all of the assets at your disposal, from network management to account management to kind of an AI driven network management diagnostics tool that that looks at the health and integrity of the network. Now, are we doing that already at a certain level? Absolutely. And again, as a kind of proof point of our success at this, we resolve greater than 90% of all internet or connectivity internet issues without even notifying the customer. So we monitor degradation, we kind of see something's wonky, and then kind of foster it to, well, what should we do about this? And if necessary, open up that ticket and get it taken care of for the customers even aware of it. Add in a layer of artificial intelligence of even deeper diagnostics, more kind of trend and kind of issue management at a more macro level. So if we see one site not doing well, what's this mean to the other ones? Is it a network issue from a specific provider, or what's the common theme here? Is there one? So just using those type of tools to further investigate what's going on. But AI has been, a very hot topic for a while now. And while we don't necessarily have AI technologies for, resale or as part of our service offering, going back to that whole analogy of the human body, do you think AI is something that sits in the brain? If the circulatory system's not getting everything it needs to get to the brain to keep it, healthy, alive, and doing stuff, again, network feeds AI the data it needs to do its cool stuff, and then get that data back out to someplace as an actual item. And so we see that as a critical element of how we support AI.
Yeah. And I was going to say, one of the things that we didn't really touch base on is, as an additional benefit of AirSpring, is, we talked about the one pane of glass and that you're adjusting your portal so that you kind of either you're going to have two or doing one. But the other thing is, for a business that has multiple locations or they're adding, they're buying people out and they're adding, is that they have the ability to have, one person to bill versus, okay, I've got to pay this person and this person with this account number and this account number, because that can get very tricky for businesses. And I say tricky, it's like, I've dealt with businesses and maybe they're paying one of the large ISPs, but if a payment goes missing or misapplied, it's a beast to get it fixed. Whereas when they're, working with AirSpring, they're getting, they can get one paper bill if that's what they desire. Correct?
And simplification is really important. And we talked a little bit about my career when we first started talking. And I talked about, what happened in the late 90s with equal access and, more competition at the local and long distance level. That's exactly why companies like AirSpring exist. So things were a lot easier from a management perspective back when AT&T was a monopoly, right? Single company, single bill, not a lot of choice, not a lot of competitiveness. So, there were trade-offs within that relationship. Equal access happened, and immediately what that created in the market was, it was very difficult for a company to source connectivity for offices across the United States, globally eventually, with that single kind of billing, control, and management capability. And that's what aggregation really is. It's an answer to a problem created through the opening up of the competitive markets of networking. And at the end of the day, while it offers more competition, better pricing, newer and better technologies through competition, things like that, it also solves the problem of, but now I'm dealing with 5 companies, 10 companies. On a global level, it might be dozens, if not greater than 20, as a single responsible party for delivering the SLA that keeps the business moving. And doing that by monitoring and intervening and fixing things before they become an issue, so that the customer can focus on their business. And that's what we've done since day one. And that's what earned us our reputation and our brand and our know-how.
Well, I think that hits it really. At the end of the day, when you talk about an aggregator, you talk about AirSpring, or you talk about, connectivity, it really is the backbone of so many businesses these days, even if you don't think about it. Because think about the transition that you've had, you talked about restaurants, like they don't have the, cashier machine like they used to. 9 times out of 10, they're like flipping around like an iPad and they're like, here, sign here and do this. And, everything is interconnected, or, and even if it's not that, they still rely on that if they have DoorDash coming in, or if they have, it's just the backbone of everything. And so, I really think when people think about their connectivity for their business, it's the importance of having that, which, to kind of bring it back to what we talked about at the very beginning is, what do you do? Like, how do you build that redundancy, that resilience, that continuity? And I think that that's one of the things that is really good about AirSpring and about being able to build that backbone for clients. So yes. But I think we have covered just about everything that we can cover right now. I greatly appreciate you. I was going to bring out my bottle. It's not tequila, but it is whiskey. So, and thank AirSpring very much, because I got this from you guys. My bottle won't show up without this. Okay. Besides, we have the same decorator, obviously.
We do.
We do. Exactly. So thank you so much for being on. Is there any final words, your words of wisdom, things that you want to add before we close out the show?
I think that what I would like to leave you and the viewers with is, in the modern world of cloud and all these technologies, we need to think holistically, and we need to think three-dimensionally. There is no single technology, there is no single service, there's no single person that really makes things work by themselves anymore. And take a step back, look at your business, and trace all of the, think of it almost as a meditation. Think of all of the things and people that need to, work together in order to give you the result you want, right? Mm-hmm. Which is happier customers, more customers, things like that. And then architect, how are you going to do that? But when you go out and, it's kind of like shopping for dinner and running into the store without the recipe, and you're like, I don't know what I need. You just start grabbing stuff off the shelf. It's very difficult to recover from that, and you wind up not making your best fish. So by taking that step back and really looking at your business three-dimensionally and all of the things it takes to make it work, you're going to be much happier with how you source technology and how it impacts your business.
Yes, I couldn't have said it more. I greatly appreciate you being on the podcast. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Tech and Tequila. I hope you enjoyed our conversation today. To stay updated about all things tech and more, don't forget to visit us at our website, shelbyts.com. If you loved what you heard, remember to show your support by liking, sharing, and subscribing to our podcast. Your 5-star ratings and reviews mean the world to us and help us to reach more listeners just like you. So muchas gracias again for joining us with Tech and Tequila. Thank you so much. You learned a lot about tech, and maybe you had a nice drink of tequila.